All right, sixth grade, welcome to lesson 2. World War II is going to start today. Yesterday we talked about the rise of all these dictators. So we finished chapter 24, World War I, and the peace treaty that came out of it, and the Great Depression. All kinds of bad things happen around the world. People are really desperate. When people get really desperate, they believe anything, including the lies, or I should maybe say the promises that these dictators made, guys. And a lot of times these dictators kept their promises. They just did it with absolute power. Today, it's going to lead to war. So we have the essential question: how does conflict develop? And for millions of people, World War II was the most destructive event in the 20th century. For many people, guys, we'd probably say the most destructive event in the history of the world. When it's all said and done, I don't know if any war claimed as many lives, involved as many people. None that I know of. So absolutely huge, major war. Let's get rolling on it. Many Germans believed that the Allies had unfairly punished Germany for causing World War I. So they supported Adolf Hitler because he criticized the Treaty of Versailles. In his speeches, Hitler vowed that he would no longer obey the treaty. So guys, if you remember at the beginning of this week when we talked about that in the last lesson, chapter 24, we blamed Germany and we made them pay those reparations. And now you just got to remember, guys, you're talking 20 years later now, the scene is set. So for a lot of people, that's not that much time. But for the young generation, in other words, your age kids, you weren't even alive, let's say, when World War I happened. Now you're a 15-year-old. Your whole life has been harsh because of the Great Depression and the rules. And so you just look at your life and say it's not fair that we're being criticized for that stuff. The Treaty of Versailles greatly limited the size of Germany's military. Hitler stated that Germany would no longer accept this limitation. So in March of 1935, he announced that Germany would increase the size of its army and form a new air force. The Treaty of Versailles also gave clear instructions about the Rhineland. This German region lay between the Rhine River and the French border. To protect France, the treaty stated that no German troops could be in the Rhineland. Taking a chance that France and Britain would not intervene, Hitler ordered German troops into the Rhineland in March of 36. So guys, Hitler's going to start to press on people. 1, I'm going to start to build a military. 2, I'm going to start to do things I'm not supposed to do. So you start to look at this, Germany's going to start to build a military, and then they're going to push into the Rhineland right here. There's not supposed to be any military people here. So France wanted this buffer to say, if Germany starts sending troops, we know we can get ready. Hitler says, I'm going to do it anyways, and we're going to see if they're willing to take the chance and pick a fight. As expected, France and Britain did not use force because neither one of them was willing to risk a war. British leaders thought they could avoid conflict by accepting Hitler's demands, which is a policy known as appeasement. Because the French relied on British help, they also accepted his demands. So what it is Hitler, don't do it, and then Hitler does it. Okay, now we have a choice. We can attack Hitler and start a war, or we can say, okay, Hitler, we gave you this, now don't go any farther. And right now they're just trying to appease Hitler. Let's not press it. We're not in a position to go to war, guys. The world is in a Great Depression right now. Hitler gained an ally in Italy's Benito Mussolini. In 1935, Italian troops invaded the African kingdom of Ethiopia. Britain and France opposed the invasion, but neither stopped it. Hitler, however, fully supported Mussolini. So Hitler helps the guy out. Next, the two dictators intervened in Spain. In 36 to 39, a destructive civil war divided the country. Germany and Italy helped a Spanish military leader named General Francisco Franco overthrow Spain's new democratic republic. Like Hitler and Mussolini, Franco headed a strong government that demanded citizens' total loyalty. Soon after Franco's victory, Hitler and Mussolini formed an alliance, but Franco did not join with them. So guys, they help down here in Ethiopia. Germany helps out Italy. They take out Ethiopia. Then these two go and take out Spain. I shouldn't say take out Spain, but they help the guy they want win Spain. So now Franco's in charge of Spain, and Germany says, sweet, help us out now. You see what they're doing? Germany, I get Spain on my side. I just sandwiched France. Germany, I have Italy on my side. I sandwiched Switzerland, Austria, and these countries in between us. So that's Hitler's plan right now. Meanwhile, Hitler grew bolder. He demanded that German-speaking Austria become part of Germany. You can see Austria here. The Austrian Chancellor asked Britain and France to help, but once more, the two democracies did nothing. So in March of '38, Hitler sent troops into Austria and took over the country. Hitler next turned to Austria's neighbor, Czechoslovakia. You can see it there. He demanded that the Czechs give up the Sudetenland, a part of Czechoslovakia where most Germans lived. Czechoslovakia refused and was ready to fight to keep its territory. Britain and France, fearing a major war, preferred to hold talks. So in September of '38, the European leaders met in the German city of Munich. At the Munich conference, British and French leaders agreed to Germany's demand for the Sudetenland. In return, Hitler pledged not to further expand German territory. Neville Chamberlain, who was Britain's prime minister, promised that there would be peace in our time. So he takes another piece of it, guys, expanding Germany. Hitler does. These guys get together, they meet, and they say, okay, you got to knock it off, no more. And Hitler says, okay, and Britain believed it, guys. Britain was super proud of themselves. They walked out there and they said, hey, we stopped a major war that could have happened here by giving Hitler this and calling it a day. Events soon proved Chamberlain, the Britain Prime Minister, that there'd be peace, wrong.
Hi, Mr. Bauer.
Yep.
Do you have 5th grade students?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, 6. Feel free to put that on your notes. Office called for Mr. Bauer. Little interruption. Okay, in March of '39, German forces took over western Czechoslovakia and set up a Nazi-friendly state in the eastern part. Hitler then demanded control of Danzig, which is a German city located in Poland. You can see this thing pointing to it here. That was under the League of Nations protection. Britain responded by promising to support Poland if the Germans invade the territory. So Hitler's going to go after this. This is in Poland. Poland says, buddy, you got my back, and Britain says, we got your back. If this happens, we're coming. We're done talking. Hitler spent the summer of '39 preparing to invade Poland. He was concerned, however, that Stalin would oppose him. So Hitler's going to go into Poland here, and he's worried that the Soviet Union is going to come after him. Although there were bitter enemies, Hitler and Stalin signed a treaty in August of '39 promising not to attack each other. They also secretly agreed to divide Poland. Hitler could now attack. So Hitler meets with Stalin and says, I'm going to attack Poland. Stalin says, whoa, that's scary. You're getting close to me. And what Hitler says is, if you don't attack me, I'm going to conquer Poland and I'll give you a little piece of it. So Stalin says, so I get territory for free? Deal. I won't attack you. You don't attack me. So September 1st, 1939, German forces invaded Poland. Guys, the date to the start of World War II. So everything leading up to this, guys, is not considered World War II. Hitler did a lot of things, but we never went to war. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Meanwhile, German planes bombed and machine-gunned Polish targets. Tanks and soldiers poured through the country's western defenses. Then Soviet troops invaded eastern Poland. In less than a month, the Germans and the Soviet Union had divided Poland between them. So Poland just gets absolutely destroyed, guys. Germany and Russia, way too powerful. In April of 1940, German forces moved north. They attacked Denmark and Norway. So you can see Denmark here north of Germany and then Norway across it. Next, they turned west. They invaded the Netherlands and Belgium. The Germans then swept into northern France. Italy joined the war on the side of Germany, attacking France from the southeast. On June 14th, German troops marched triumphantly into Paris. The French surrendered a week later. So you can see Hitler here, guys, the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So Germany just destroys everybody in its way. The fall of France meant that the Allies were down to one major power, Britain. Hitler expected the British to seek peace. Instead, Britain's new prime minister, whose name is Winston Churchill, you should know that name, defiantly declared, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the landing grounds, we will fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We will never surrender." So he knows it's going to be a costly battle, he knows it's going to be bloody, but he says we cannot stop fighting. Hitler was now determined to invade Britain. In August, the German Air Force set out to destroy Britain's Royal Air Force. They're called the RAF. Germany's Air Force is called the Luftwaffe. And they wanted to take control of the skies. The Germans began bombing British airfields and aircraft factories. These attacks started an air battle that became known as the Battle of Britain. So literally every day, German planes flew into Britain, guys, and tried to bomb military targets. A new technology, which is called radar, helped the RAF. Radar stations along the British coasts could track the incoming German airplanes. They directed British fighter planes to stop them. In other words, we knew they were coming and we knew which direction. They would launch the airplanes and it would start to intercept them. We're very familiar with radar today, guys. Britain literally was the one that put it on the ground, launched it in World War II. As German air losses mounted, German planes started bombing British cities. They destroyed large areas of London and killed many civilians. So I hope you can see the change in warfare. Up until this point, Germany was trying to just kill British airplanes, air pilots, and the factories that made them. Now they say, hey, we're not winning this war. How are we going to get this to win? Let's stop attacking military and let's just start bombing the people. So we're going to start bombing London and killing civilians. The hope of that move is simply this, that Winston Churchill says, innocent people are dying. There's only one way to make sure the young, the old, women, things like that don't die. It's to sign a peace treaty. So if you ask me, guys, Hitler's starting to play pretty dirty by not attacking military things and just attacking people. The attacks failed to break Britain's will to fight. So the citizens said, we'll keep doing it. By October of 1940, Germany had not won control of the air. So Hitler canceled the invasion plans. Britain escaped invasion thanks to a few hundred of these pilots. Churchill told Britain's parliament, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. So what he's really saying is all of Britain, all those people literally owe their lives to those brave pilots that went up and fought against the German Air Force. And it was amazing. Even some American pilots, guys, went over and volunteered to be part of the RAF and fight against them. And it was crazy dogfights in the air back in the day. At first, the United States determined to stay neutral, not taking sides in the war. In the 1930s, before it started, Congress had passed laws making it illegal for the United States to assist warring countries if the U.S. was not involved in the war itself. So we passed a law that says unless we're fighting, we're not helping a side. If we're in the war, then obviously we'll help a side. But we're not going to help a side and get pulled into a war, was the thinking behind it. President Roosevelt, however, viewed Germany as a danger to the United States. So in 1940, Roosevelt convinced Congress to approve a policy that allowed the British to buy U.S. goods if they paid cash and carried the goods to Britain in their own ships. Congress passed what we call the Lend-Lease Act in 1941. This law allowed the U.S. to lend weapons to Britain. Roosevelt also ordered U.S. naval protection for British ships sailing close to the United States. So it was a good deal for us at the beginning, guys. He said, hey, we'll sell you the gear you need, but you have to bring your boats over here, get it, and ship it back because we don't want Germany attacking our boats or have to pay the consequence of that. And then we're just going to slowly expand our use. Failing to defeat Britain, Hitler turned his attention to taking over the Soviet Union. Hitler ignored the agreement that he and Stalin had made not to attack each other. German forces invaded the Soviet Union in June of 1941. They destroyed most of its warplanes, they disabled their tanks, and they captured 500,000 soldiers. Part of this is we don't know if we can. Germany doesn't know if they can take Britain. Part of this, I think, is Hitler thinking Britain will eventually collapse. So Hitler says, I'll just keep using my air force. I'll keep going back here. I'll keep bombing Britain. I don't need to have all my soldiers over here. Britain's getting bombed. They're not going to attack us. I'll take my main soldiers and I'll ship them across and we'll attack the Soviet Union, stabbing Stalin in the back, who had signed this Treaty of Innocence. As the Germans advanced into Soviet territory, Stalin ordered what's called the scorched earth policy. His own troops and civilians burned everything. They burned the cities, they burned the crops, they blew up dams, they just made it impossible for the Germans to use anything as they went along. So guys, a lot of time in war, when we take over the city, then we take all the food out of the city, we take the clothing out of the city. In other words, we use what's left behind to feed and clothe our military. Russia burned it all. When the rainy season began, muddy roads trapped the German army trucks and wagons. Soon afterward, the harsh Russian winter set in, catching the German invaders unprepared. On December 2nd, 1941, Hitler's army reached the outskirts of Moscow. The Soviets struck back, forcing a German retreat. So, just like Napoleon, who 150 years earlier attacked Russia and got stuck in their winter, Hitler does the same thing. Doesn't understand history. While Hitler and Mussolini waged war in Europe, the Japanese launched new attacks in East Asia. Japan had taken over Manchuria in 1931, before World War II. During the rest of the 30s, the Japanese moved steadily southward into China. In 1937, they seized Nanjing, which is the Chinese capital. China's leader, Chiang Kai-shek, retreated into China's interior. His government later joined the Allied powers. So Japan's taking over China and the rest. Japan's next moved into Southeast Asia. After France surrendered in 1940, Japanese forces seized the French colony of Indochina. The Japanese also wanted to seize the Dutch East Indies, British Malaya, and the Philippines. Their goal was to obtain the badly needed food supplies, the oil, and the rubber they needed for this war. In response to Japan's actions, President Roosevelt blocked Japanese efforts to withdraw money they had deposited in American banks. He also stopped sales of oil, gasoline, and other resources to Japan. So we start ramping up. Remember, we're supposed to stay out of the war. So step one, we're not going to let you use the money. We do this all the time, guys. A lot of companies around the world invest in us, and so we know that they might have ties. So let's say a French company invests money in our companies, and all of a sudden we don't like France anymore. We'll say hold their money against them, and then cut them off. In response to Japan's actions, the American actions angered the Japanese, who decided to go to war against the United States. So on December 7th, 1941, super important date, Japan carried out a surprise attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor. The attack destroyed many battleships, planes, and killed more than 2,300 soldiers, sailors, and civilians. It also enraged the American people. The next day, President Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. He called December 7th a date which will live forever in infamy. So guys, we have the word famous. Infamy is famous for the wrong reason, because it's so bad. It's a disgrace to us. So we declare war on Japan. 4 days later, on December 11th, Germany and Italy declare war on us. So you can see the picture of Japan, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, guys. Horrible day for us. Caught us kind of off guard, although we did luck out some. The worst on that one was it sunk our destroyer called the U.S. Arizona. If you go to Pearl Harbor today, guys, that boat is still on the bottom of Pearl Harbor, and the soldiers that died are still inside it today. It is our only underwater military cemetery that you can visit to this day. All right, World War II begins. We'll continue to talk about the end of it next week. Have a great day.